Thank you, Mix Speaker. I'm going to rise and say a few words to this hoist motion, and I'm going to speak a few words in support of the motion. When we're often compared to school children in this chamber, and tonight I spoke to my kids, and the first question I asked them after school was, did you do your homework? And they said yes. I don't believe them, but what can I do? Here I am. But this is the same question we need to ask about this bill. Did the government do its homework? And I think that when we saw this bill, the first response was, is that it? Is that it? Because as I think has been pointed out, we were given some really clear options from the federal government. These aren't like options like, hey, do you feel like, or gee, it would be awesome if. It was, you are required to price carbon. Here are the options of how you can do that. And I feel like that logic is a little bit lost on the government right now, in particular the Premier. The Premier has now spent days somehow mystifyingly blaming the opposition for the fact that he hasn't done his homework. And, that is probably, dog ate my homework. There's lots of great examples of people doing that in other ways. But I think it's really clear here, and I think it's really, really important because it's just spin. And it's disingenuous, and I think it's important that we are really clear about what's happening here. We were given a task as a province. The minister and the premier were given a task, which was to figure out a way to price carbon according to the federal benchmarks. And first, the government said, we're not going to do that. So what happens if someone says, here's your homework, you say, I'm not going to do that. They say, yeah, okay, you still have to turn your homework. And so then they said, come on, everybody, stand with us. We don't want to do our homework. And then that didn't work. And so then the next tactic was, okay, we're going to do a tiny part of our homework. Is that enough? And the answer clearly is no, because this isn't a request, it's a requirement. And so, quite to the contrary of what the government has been asserting, this bill ushers in a federal carbon tax. That is the function. If this is the only bill that we are going to see that contemplates carbon pricing, then the impact of this bill, in addition to pricing pollution from Lafarge and Nova Scotia Power, which is a good thing. We don't argue that that's not a good thing. It's important. But in addition to that, what this bill does is it ensures that a federal carbon tax will be imposed upon the province of Nova Scotia. And so quite to the contrary of the assertions that this is somehow a nefarious plot of the opposition, who I remind you are sitting in a chamber with a majority government who make all the decisions and have made it pretty clear through the way they run this chamber that they're not that interested in what any of us have to say about anything. So what this government is doing is that they are inviting the federal government to implement a carbon tax. And I think that that point is really clear. And so that is why I am standing in support of the hoist motion, because what this does is it says, finish your homework. It's a finish your homework motion. Please take this back. Go back to the table with the federal government and have the conversation that needs to be had. Figure out a made in Nova Scotia solution that retains the green fund, that protects consumers, but that most of all protects our environment. Mr. Speaker, I think it's really important that although we have the Environmental Goals and Climate Change Reduction Act, we don't have a climate plan. We have a history of opposition, in fact, to what I think are some of the progressive climate legislation that's moved through this House. And so basically, the Made in Nova Scotia plan that wasn't a plan that didn't price carbon said, take us at our word. And that's not how it works. And so what we are saying is do your homework and show it to us. And I think that's the same thing that the federal government is saying. And so for those reasons, I support the hoist motion. I think it makes sense to send it back. I know that there are lots of brilliant people in the Department of Environment and Climate Change who can help us to finish the work that we have been asked to do. Thank you.